Diana Snodgrass was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and make it brighter. When George Strait played through the speakers, she wasn't just dancing, she was gliding. Her friends called her the life of the party. Her family called her Deedee. Her sister Pamela remembered one night clearly. She said, "We went to the club together and she just floated by on the dance floor. Everyone stopped to watch her." That was Diana, a dancer, a seamstress, and a woman with a laugh that could fill the room. She was also a brilliant cook, recently starting a catering business on the side. She was warm, funny, and the kind of person who always gave more than she had. But her story, the one that began with love, music, and laughter, would end in tragedy. On July 27, 1990, Diana attended what would be her last night out. It was supposed to be another evening of fun with friends, but by sunrise, she would be gone forever. Before that night, Diana had built a life filled with family, faith, and resilience. Born in Columbus, Indiana, she was the eldest of 5 siblings. Her childhood was filled with the chaos of big family life, moving from state to state, helping her mother raise the younger kids. When the Snodgrass family finally settled in Jacksonville, Florida, Diana took on a special title among her siblings, Little Mom. She helped raise her brothers and sisters while her mother worked hard to provide for the family. Pamela still remembers those early years. "She always looked after me. Even as kids, I felt safe when she was there," she said. As she grew older, Diana became a symbol of independence and beauty. She always looked put together, with her hair perfectly styled and her clothes carefully chosen. She took pride in how she presented herself. When she drove her station wagon with the windows rolled down, her hair would blow in the wind and catch the sunlight. She had that effortless Florida girl charm, tanned skin, bright eyes, and a smile that could make anyone feel welcome. She loved her family deeply, especially her daughter Angela, whom she had at just 16 years old. Despite the challenges of being a young mother, Diana poured her heart into raising her child. She worked hard, surrounded by family and friends, always keeping her laughter alive. Her bond with her family never faded. Diana's siblings still describe her as their protector, their role model, and their light. Her love of dancing, cooking, and family made her unforgettable. She had dreams, too, of growing her catering business, maybe even opening a small cafe someday. But none of those dreams would come true. Her final night seemed ordinary. A few drinks, laughter with friends, the sound of country music echoing through the bar. Yet somewhere between that joy and the drive home, something went terribly wrong. By the next morning, the world that Diana's family knew would shatter forever. When Diana Snodgrass disappeared, her family knew something was wrong almost immediately. It wasn't like her to go more than a day without checking in. She was always in touch, with her daughter Angela, her mother, and her siblings. Silence was never her style. That weekend, she had gone to one of her favorite bars, the Beer Witch, near her apartment on Jacksonville's Lane Avenue. It was just after her 33rd birthday. She wanted to unwind, celebrate, and catch up with friends. Witnesses said she left the bar late that night, heading out with someone she knew. No one knew that would be the last time anyone saw her alive. The next morning, July 28, 1990, her body was found near the US 129 exit off Interstate 10, near Live Oak, Florida, over an hour away from where she was last seen. The newspaper headline the following day told of an unidentified woman found dead by the highway. Her mother was the first to read it. The description, the age, the hair, the clothing, all of it matched Diana. A mother's heart knows before the words are spoken. She dropped the paper and whispered, "That's my baby." Pamela still remembers that moment. "We were all in shock. I couldn't believe it. I just kept thinking maybe they were wrong, maybe it was someone else." But the truth came swiftly. Diana was gone. Her daughter Angela, who was visiting Florida that summer before her senior year of high school, heard the news while staying with a family friend. She said she remembers the silence after hearing the words. Not crying, not screaming, just silence. "It didn't feel real," she said. "Mom was supposed to pick me up that weekend. Instead, she was gone." For the Snodgrass family, everything changed. The laughter that had always filled their home turned into quiet mourning. Pamela said it best. "We fell apart. My mother was never the same. Ever." In the days that followed, family and friends flooded in with support. But it wasn't enough to ease the pain. There were too many questions, too many pieces that didn't fit. Who had been with Diana that night? Why had she ended up so far away from home? Detectives worked the case, but soon the investigation hit a wall. Then, just weeks later, the Gainesville student murders dominated national headlines. A series of brutal killings that consumed Florida law enforcement's time and attention. Diana's case was quietly pushed aside. Her family tried to stay patient, believing answers would come eventually. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The phone stopped ringing. The detectives stopped visiting. Pamela said, "It was like the world moved on, but we were stuck in the same moment. We were still living that night over and over." Her mother, broken by the loss, would spend hours sitting at the kitchen table, staring at old photos of Diana, her smile frozen in time. Pamela would try to distract her, to bring up good memories, but nothing seemed to help. And there were good memories, hundreds of them. Diana teaching Pamela to dance in the living room. The two of them singing along to country songs on the radio. Thanksgiving dinners where Diana and their mom would spend hours in the kitchen, laughing, cooking, and taste-testing everything before it hit the table. Pamela still remembers her sister's green bean casserole, her favorite dish, something she still makes every year in Diana's honor. The pain didn't fade. It just changed shape, from shock to sorrow and then to determination. Pamela said, "When you lose someone that way, you don't ever move on. You just learn to live around the hole that's left." For the Snodgrass family, that hole has never been filled. In the days following the discovery of Diana Snodgrass's body, investigators worked tirelessly to gather evidence. Detectives from Suwannee County and Jacksonville followed every possible lead, but there were no witnesses, no clear motive, and no signs of robbery. Diana's purse, jewelry, and clothes were found intact. It was as if someone had taken her life and vanished into thin air. Her family couldn't understand it. Diana wasn't involved in anything dangerous. She was a loving mother, a hard worker, a woman who found joy in simple things. Dancing, cooking, and spending time with her family. Who could want to harm her? Pamela remembers the first time detectives came to their house. They sat across the table, quiet, their notebooks open but their faces heavy with uncertainty. They asked about Diana's friends, her habits, her relationships. Had she been seeing anyone new? Did she owe anyone money? Had she mentioned being afraid of someone? But none of it made sense. Diana didn't live recklessly. She had friends from all walks of life, but she wasn't the kind of person to put herself in danger. The detectives traced her final steps that night. She'd been at the Beer Witch, in a small bar that sat tucked between an auto shop and a laundromat. It was a place where locals came for cheap beer, good music, and dancing. Witnesses recalled her laughing, talking, and then leaving with a man, someone she seemed comfortable with. That man was never identified. One witness described him vaguely. Medium build, dark hair, driving an older vehicle, possibly a pickup truck. But that was all police had to go on. In 1990, there were no security cameras at the bar, no cell phones to track, no digital trail to follow. The investigation crawled forward with interviews, but no solid evidence emerged. There were rumors, whispers that she may have been followed, that she may have been offered a ride home and never made it there. But rumors aren't proof, and without proof, justice stood still. Then came August. Just weeks after Diana's death, the Gainesville murders dominated every newspaper, every TV station, every conversation across Florida. The serial killings were horrific and terrifying, and they consumed the attention of nearly every law enforcement agency in the state. For Diana's family, that moment was devastating in more ways than one. Not only were they grieving, but they felt forgotten. Pamela said, "It was like her case just stopped mattering. Everyone's focus shifted and we were left behind." The detectives stopped calling as often. The case, which had once felt urgent, started to fade from the spotlight. Diana's murder file was placed on a shelf, not closed, but no longer active. Months turned into years. Her daughter Angela grew older, carrying the weight of her mother's loss into adulthood. "I missed her every day," Angela said. "There were so many times I wanted to pick up the phone and call her. I wanted to ask her about school, boys, life, but she wasn't there." Her family refused to let Diana's memory fade. Pamela and her mother would visit her grave often, bringing flowers, telling her how much she was missed. But with every visit came the same aching question. Why? Pamela said, "Every time I went to that grave, I promised her I wouldn't give up. Someone out there knows what happened. Someone saw something." Years later, cold case detectives would reopen Diana's file. They re-examined the evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and checked for DNA. But time had taken its toll. Witnesses had moved. Memories had faded, and the physical evidence wasn't enough to build a case. Still, they never officially closed it. They kept her story in the system, waiting for that one breakthrough. For the Snodgrass family, the investigation became a long, painful waiting game, a search for closure that never came. Pamela said she learned to live with the questions, but she never stopped hoping that one day, someone would finally come forward. Her mother, though, couldn't bear the waiting. She would sit for hours just staring at Diana's photo, Pamela recalled. She used to say she could feel her presence sometimes, like Diana was trying to tell her something. Over time, the pain hardened into quiet determination. The Snodgrass family would not let Diana be forgotten. Not by the world, not by the justice system, and not by the people who took her life. The weeks following Diana's murder were a blur of pain and disbelief. For her family, nothing made sense anymore. Pamela remembers walking into her mother's kitchen the morning after they saw the newspaper. The smell of coffee in the air, the silence that felt heavier than any sound. Her mother sat at the table holding the paper, her hands trembling as she reread the short article describing a deceased female found near Live Oak. There was no name printed yet, but a mother always knows. Pamela said, the second she read that description, she knew it was Deedee. There was just this stillness, like everything stopped. The police came later that day to confirm it. That moment shattered their world. We fell apart, Pamela said softly. We all did. Mom was never the same after that day. None of us were. The family held a small funeral service for Diana, attended by relatives, friends, and a few of her co-workers. Her daughter Angela was there too, still in shock, still waiting for someone to tell her that it was all a mistake. I remember people hugging me, crying around me, Angela said. But it felt like I was watching it all happen from somewhere far away. One face from that day has stayed with her ever since. A man she didn't recognize. He wore jeans, a button-up shirt, and carried himself with quiet respect. He approached Angela gently and told her he'd known her mother. He said she was his favorite waitress at the restaurant. He told me he always looked forward to her smile and her coffee. I never forgot that, Angela said. For her, that small story meant everything. It was proof that even in ordinary moments her mother had touched people's lives. But after the funeral, life became unbearably quiet. The laughter that used to fill the house was gone. Holidays, especially Thanksgiving, were the hardest. She and Mom used to cook everything together, Pamela recalled. The smell of her green bean casserole would fill the house. Now it just felt empty. The family tried to hold on to traditions, but the grief would sneak into everything. Pamela said she would find herself reaching for the phone to call her sister, to tell her about a funny memory or a new recipe, then remember she couldn't. Angela, still a teenager at the time, returned to Indiana to finish high school. She tried to throw herself into classes, friends, and plans for the future, but she carried the weight of that summer with her everywhere. I was angry, she admitted. Not at anyone in particular, just angry that she was gone. Angry that I didn't get to say goodbye. She missed all the small things, her mother's laugh, her perfume, the sound of her voice singing along to country songs while cooking dinner. When I got older, I realized how much she really did for us, Angela said. I wish I could have told her that. Pamela, on the other hand, stayed in Florida. She kept herself busy, raising her kids, working, trying to help their mother heal. But the grief always found her. She avoided driving near Lane Avenue for years because she couldn't bear to pass the spot where Diana had spent her last night. Every July, when the air grew heavy and the cicadas hummed outside, Pamela felt it all over again. The month of July just hurts, she said. Her birthday, the day she was taken, it's all right there. I relive it every year. As time passed, the pain didn't fade, it simply changed. Pamela began to find small ways to honor her sister. On holidays, she made Diana's green bean casserole. On birthdays, she lit a candle and played George Strait songs, imagining her sister dancing somewhere under the stars. That was her song, Anything George Strait, Pamela smiled. When I hear those songs now, I can almost see her again twirling on that dance floor. For Angela, healing came more slowly. She often returned to Florida to visit Diana's grave, bringing flowers and brushing away the leaves from the headstone. I always talk to her, Angela said. I tell her about my life, my daughters, how much I miss her. Each visit brought a mix of sadness and peace. It's strange, being there hurts, but it's also comforting, Angela said. It's like for a few moments she's right there with me. Over the years, Angela and Pamela became each other's anchor. They talked often, shared memories, and found comfort in keeping Diana's story alive. They both refused to let her become another forgotten case file. She was too full of life for her story to just end that way, Pamela said. Despite the passing decades, they still hope that someone, somewhere, knows something. A name, a memory, a truth that could finally bring peace, Pamela said. We may never get justice the way we want it, but as long as we speak her name, Diana, she's still with us. For years after Diana's death, the Snodgrass family waited for answers that never came. The initial investigation began with urgency. Detectives interviewed bar patrons, checked nearby businesses, and combed through leads about who Diana might have left with that night. But soon, other headlines began to drown hers out. It was the summer of 1990, just weeks after Diana's murder. A string of shocking killings gripped the state, the Gainesville murders. Suddenly, every available law enforcement resource shifted focus. The Snodgrass case quietly slipped from the front page to the back of a file drawer. Pamela remembers the moment clearly. We'd call and no one would answer. Or they'd say, we're still working on it. But we knew they weren't, we just knew. What hurt the most was how abruptly everything stopped. Detectives stopped calling. Tips dried up and the family's hope began to thin under the weight of silence. One day they were telling us they were close to something, said Angela. And the next, nothing. Just quiet. The family was devastated but not surprised. Jacksonville in the early 90s was a place where violent crimes were piling up faster than cases could be solved. Victims like Diana, a working-class woman out for a night with friends, too often became names on forgotten lists. Pamela said, for a long time I was angry that her life didn't seem to matter as much as the next big story. She was a person. She had kids. She had a family that loved her. The details they did know were few. Diana had last been seen leaving the Beer Witch bar in Jacksonville, a familiar spot near her apartment complex. Witnesses said she'd left with a man, someone no one seemed to know well. That was the last confirmed sighting. By morning, she was found near the I-10 exit at Live Oak, miles away from where she had been seen hours before. The discovery site was rural, lined with trees and thick brush. Whoever had left her there knew it was secluded. There were no cameras, no witnesses, just a quiet patch of earth where her life had been taken and her story almost buried. Police initially questioned several individuals, including patrons from the bar, but nothing concrete tied anyone to her death. There were no fingerprints, no clear DNA matches, and no murder weapon ever found. Forensics in 1990 were limited compared to today. Evidence that might have cracked the case now was either degraded or lost back then. Pamela spent years wondering if the killer was someone they knew, a local, maybe even someone who had attended the funeral pretending to be a friend. I still think about that man who came to the service, she said. The one who said he was a customer at the restaurant. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Something about him felt off. The uncertainty became its own kind of torment. Every stranger's face held a question. Could it be him? The decades passed slowly. Angela grew up, started a family of her own, and learned to carry the pain quietly. For a long time I didn't talk about it, she said. People move on, but we never could. There's this empty space that doesn't close. Pamela took a different path. She refused to let silence erase her sister's memory. She kept calling the sheriff's department, writing letters, and sharing Diana's story with advocacy groups. Eventually, she connected with Project Cold Case, an organization that helps families of unsolved homicide victims share their stories publicly. That connection changed everything. For the first time in decades, someone was listening again. They made us feel like we weren't crazy for still caring, still hoping, Pamela said. They reminded us that justice doesn't have an expiration date. Through Project Cold Case, Diana's story found new life. It appeared online, reaching thousands of readers who had never heard of her before. Some even reached out with possible information or old memories from Jacksonville's nightlife in 1990. While nothing definitive has come of it yet, the renewed awareness brought a small measure of comfort to the family. Pamela said, "Maybe someone out there remembers something. Maybe they saw her that night or know who she was with. Even the smallest detail could change everything." Today, the investigation remains officially unsolved. Law enforcement still lists it as an open cold case, meaning technically, it could still be solved if new evidence surfaces. DNA testing has advanced, and Pamela continues to advocate for the evidence from her sister's case to be re-examined using modern forensic tools. "Maybe it's been 35 years, she said, "but time doesn't erase truth. Someone knows what happened to my sister, and I'm not giving up until I find out." Angela agrees. Mom deserves that. She deserves to be more than just a file number. The pain hasn't faded, but neither has the love. Every Thanksgiving, Pamela still makes that same green bean casserole. She says it's her way of keeping Diana close. "When it comes out of the oven, it smells just like her kitchen used to," she said with a soft smile. For a moment, she's here again. Even after all these years, for Pamela and Angela, it feels like time has barely moved. The world around them changed. Technology advanced, the city grew, faces came and went. But the ache remained the same. Every day without answers feels like reliving the day Diana was taken from them. Pamela sits in her small kitchen most mornings, a framed photo of Diana propped up beside her coffee mug. The picture is slightly faded now. Diana's smile forever frozen in the late 1980s. Her hair teased, her eyes full of mischief. "She was fearless," Pamela says. "That's what hurts the most. She wasn't the type to back down from anyone. Whoever did this, they must have caught her off guard." Over the years, Pamela has replayed that night in her head 1,000 times. The laughter at the bar, the music, the neon glow bouncing off the bottles. She imagines her sister walking out with someone she thought was a friend. Someone who offered her a ride. Maybe they promised to take her home. Maybe they had other plans. Angela says she's stopped trying to picture the crime itself. "It's too painful," she admits quietly. "I'd rather remember her voice the way she used to sing when she made breakfast. She always made everything feel like a song." The Snodgrass family's pain is one that many families of cold case victims know all too well. The endless waiting, the endless wondering. Each passing year doesn't bring closure. It just deepens the mystery. Pamela has become a quiet expert in the world of unsolved crimes. She's learned how to read case files, how to track down investigators, even how to navigate public record requests. "I never thought I'd be doing this," she said. But when you love someone, you do whatever it takes. She often visits the place where Diana's body was found. It's overgrown now. The once clear patch of dirt covered in tall grass and pine needles. There's no marker, no sign to say what happened there. Just silence. Heavy, endless silence. Pamela kneels there sometimes, brushing the grass aside, whispering to her sister. "I tell her I'm still trying," she says. "That I haven't forgotten. That I never will." In recent years, true crime podcasts and YouTube documentaries have revived interest in forgotten stories like Diana's. New eyes mean new hope. Viewers sometimes reach out with leads or theories that police never considered. Pamela says she's grateful for that. Not because she expects an overnight miracle, but because awareness itself is a form of justice. "When people say her name, she exists again," she said. "That's all we've ever wanted. Even the coldest case can thaw with the right spark." Advances in DNA technology have solved cases older than Diana's, some dating back to the 1970s. Pamela and Angela both hold on to that. Every time a news story breaks about a decades-old mystery finally solved through modern testing, Pamela can't help but think, that could be us next. But until then, they live with the what-ifs. What if someone who knows the truth is still alive? What if they've told someone, a friend, a lover, a stranger at a bar, and that person just doesn't realize what they know? What if there's a piece of evidence in a dusty box that could reveal everything? Angela has thought about reaching out to newer private investigators, maybe even using her savings to re-examine the case. "It's crazy," she says. "But part of me thinks if we could just find the right person who cares enough to look again, we might finally get somewhere." Despite the heartbreak, both women still find ways to keep Diana's spirit alive. They've turned grief into remembrance. Every year on Diana's birthday, they gather with close friends and family at the same park she used to take her kids to. They light candles, share stories, and play her favorite songs. Sometimes people who never even met Diana show up. They've read about her online or seen her name through Project Cold Case, and they just want to show support. Pamela says that's what gives her hope. It's not just about how she died anymore. It's about how she lived, and how people still care, Angela added softly. When we tell her story, we take her back from whoever took her. Pamela nods at that. Exactly, she says. He took her body. But her story, that belongs to us now, and we'll keep telling it until the truth finally comes out. As the years stretch forward, the world may move on, but for the Snodgrass family, the search for justice continues quietly, steadily, endlessly. Somewhere out there, someone still knows what happened that night in 1990. And until that person speaks, time for them will never truly move on. Pamela still keeps her sister's old jewelry box, the one Diana used to keep on her dresser, filled with small keepsakes, old photographs, and a faded lipstick. It's all she has left to hold. Every time she opens it, she says she can still smell her sister's perfume. That sweet floral scent Diana wore every day before heading out the door. 35 years later, that scent is all that lingers, a reminder of a life that should have never been stolen. Angela visits her mother's grave every summer. She brings fresh flowers and sits quietly beside the headstone, brushing away the leaves. Sometimes she talks out loud, sometimes she just listens to the sound of the wind through the trees. I always imagine she can hear me, Angela says softly, and I hope she knows I'm still trying to make her proud. There are moments when the pain hits just as hard as it did the day they lost her. But through that pain, they found strength, not in forgetting, but in remembering. Pamela says she made a promise long ago. As long as she's alive, Diana's story will never fade. The Snodgrass family hopes that one day, someone watching, listening, or reading might hold the missing piece, the truth that can finally bring peace to Diana's memory. We're not looking for revenge, Pamela says. We just want to know what happened. We just want to let her rest. Maybe that person is out there right now. Maybe they've been silent for too long. Maybe this is their moment to come forward. So tonight, as this story closes, remember the name Diana Snodgrass, a loving mother, sister, and daughter whose light still shines through the people who refuse to forget her. Justice doesn't fade with time, and neither does love. If you believe that every story deserves an ending, then don't let Diana's name be lost to time. Share this video, so her story reaches one more person who might know the truth. Comment "Justice for Diana" to stand with her family. Subscribe to help us keep these unsolved stories alive, because your voice might be the one that finally brings peace.